Welcome to the Mythicist Milwaukee Show podcast. Before we get started, we'd like to extend special thanks to all the sponsors of the Myth Information Conference 3 coming up on October 21st at historic Turner Hall in Milwaukee. Freedom from Religion Foundation, the Sophia Wolf Quadracci Memorial Fund for Stem Cell Research, author of the new book Mythos Christos, Edwin Herbert, Atheist Alliance of America, Atheist Republic, Godless Engineer, Kenosha Racine Atheists and Free Thinkers, and the Atheist Community of Milwaukee. Your $300 sponsorship includes a table at the conference, 1 ticket to the event, and 1 ticket to the VIP party, as well as a mention on all of our various social media platforms, including this fine podcast. Buy your tickets and sponsorships at mythicistmilwaukee.com. All of us here at Mythicist Milwaukee would like to thank all of our patrons for supporting this show. And now here's your hosts, Rob Moore and Brian Edward. Thanks again for joining us, everybody. I'm Rob Moore, the deacon of doubt in these parts. Happy to be with you and back in the co-pilot. You know, Jesus is not my co-pilot. Brian is my co-pilot and none more capable. He's the friar of free thought himself. Welcome back to Brian Edwards. What's going on, Brian?
Pretty good. Ended up last night talking atheism at a party. As always happens, I don't even invite it in. It finds me.
You think pretty soon people are going to get bored of that and just stop letting you in?
I don't know. I mean, it comes to me.
It happens a lot. It happens to all of us. I think it's kind of a thing where we think everybody's interested in it because we're loudmouth atheists, and like most people just don't give a shit, you know?
Well, it came up. They're like, well, how did you and Anna meet? And we met at our Mythicist conference. So you have to talk about it.
I suppose so, and none better to talk about it with than today's guest. He's Reginald Finley, and he's been doing this since way before. He's a young-looking guy. I don't know how, but he was ahead of the curve on this since like '99. He was out there doing an atheist and a secular podcast before any of us. You know, before I even dawned on me to be an activist of any kind. What do you know about his podcast, Brian? Have you listened to it ever?
I know that there's an enormous amount of episodes between 99 and 2010. Really cranking it out. Back when, I was probably still trying to find out what Netscape was, and he's already on there, cranking it out.
1999. Welcome, Reginald. How you doing?
I'm doing great, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for doing what you did. I'm like as usual. I'm way behind the curve, willing to talk about things I don't know. So I'd never heard of you or didn't know what you did, and you can start right at the beginning like I'm a schoolboy and let me know how you got started doing really what is, if anyone knows of an earlier important atheist podcast, they can chime in at Mythicist MKE on Twitter and tell us. But you had the first, didn't you? And it was cool, man. Tell us all
prolific.
About it. Tell us all about it.
Well, yeah, thank you. Wow, yes, I guess I was one of the first. I was inspired actually by Jake with the Atheism, Freedom, Liberation show. He was one of the first. And of course, this is before there was even podcasting. I mean, I think we call this real audio streaming or MP3 streaming through Winamp, or we use Windows Media Player back in the day when they allowed you to get on their servers and actually broadcast live. So this was way back when. And but Jake was doing his program, and what really happened was I was going to a Catholic university, funny enough, and I took a philosophy course called Atheism, and I was like, sure, let me hear what these heathens have to talk about, and the textbook was George H. Smith's book, Atheism, The Case Against God. If you haven't read it, guys, check it out. I recommend some folks new to free thought definitely check it out. And I read that book 3 times before the course even started. It was just that amazing of a book. George had the courage to basically talk about things and ask questions that I was told by my community not to ask about religion. And that led me on a journey to start searching for, because by then, now the internet is beginning to blossom, and so I began doing a lot of searching, and there wasn't really a lot out there. There was only one other black atheist that I knew of online at that time, and that was Norm Allen Jr. That was it. He was the only one. And I later discovered I wanted to hear some audio. I wanted to hear what people were saying. This is before YouTube.
Yeah.
So I started doing searching through Yahoo search. What was out there. And I found Jake's show, the AFL show, the Atheism, Freedom, Liberation show. we later got together and we formed the Atheist Network. And a lot of broadcasters began coming on board. We started teaching other broadcasters how to do their programs. We had like the Screaming Monkeys. Bob Price started on my program, and he started his own program called The Bible Geek. And we had the Evolution Podcast, Evolution 101, and we just continue to have many, many different programs coming on board. And we were teaching them how to all start their own broadcast. And everything was looking great until YSWAP.
That was in 2005 or 2006?
Yeah, glad you went there for us. Go ahead and tell us about YSWAP.
Everything was great until YSWAP, and I look back at that, and I realize now I could have really turned that into a cash cow. I could have, but I try to just, be who I am. I'm a patient, nice guy, and that's not what they wanted. They wanted, hail Satan, me kicking Christians in the teeth, that's what they wanted, and they didn't get it. So they demonized my family. And I tell people, when you see that episode, it's really maybe 20% true. I said the only real part was probably me crying. And even that's fake because you don't know what I was crying about.
So they set it up to be you against you as an atheist against a Christian family. So that would be the drama in the swap.
Yes,
and not getting that, they needed something. And so they took the worst of they edited the worst of your family and kind of made that the
oh yeah, it was a puzzle. I mean, they put it together.
They compared it when they were talking about the two families. They mentioned the I think their name was the Stone Rocks.
Right.
The
so
Stone Rocks. I did watch it. They had 6 kids and 1 girl. They homeschool their kids. God first, and then education. Then about the Finleys, they said they met online on the internet, which I think was meant to be a bit of a taboo back in 2005.
Yes, it was.
Atheists, God is fake. He works 18 hours a day in a show, and I thought, man, I don't even know resident physicians that work 18 hours a day. And on his anti-God website, there was this very subtle dig every time that they were trying to give the facts. The kids complain about not being able to do this. No. They're playing video games and not spending time with the kids. They're afraid to go outside of the house, which I thought was weird. Again, it didn't vet right away.
Now, I have to ask you, Brian, did you watch that as part of your research, or were you a fan of the show and you remember it?
I've watched Wife Swap before, but I did not see that one. I whipped it out in line.
You whipped it out?
I was able to pull it up pretty quick on
nice.
Lifetime, actually.
Why don't we?
And they will not stop showing it, by the way. Every year, I swear, at least 2 or 3 times a year, they show it, and I get new emails from either people who love me or hate me, all about the episode. And I have to remind them that was 2005.
Right.
I am 42 years old now. I was in my 20s, I think, or so, in that late 20s or early 30s long time ago.
Hard to say no to something like that, though, right? I could be on Wife Swap.
Well, what the thing was, I actually asked my fans and my listeners and my friends and family about it first. I said, what do you think? I mean, is this a good idea? They're probably going to edit the crap out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't know much about television editing. I've been on a few television programs before, but it was straightforward. But I've never been on a reality TV show where they could manipulate it. And I didn't really know what to expect. I said, look, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to show who we really are. What can they do to us? And they did a number on this is what they did. And so right around this time, though, I was already going through a schism on my own websites, InfidelGuy.com, AtheistNetwork.com, AtheistRadio.com. I used to have like 20 or 30 domain names. Anyway, they began to become fractured because I am your patient, nice atheist. At least, shall I say, I evolved to become that. Early on, I was more militant. But I noticed that when believers would come to the website to say, hey, I'm a Christian. Why do you guys believe this? It was nothing like, get the freak out of here, you dumbass, dummy, stupid idiot. And I said, whoa. Let's talk to them. Let's help these folks understand our position. And half the group was like, shut up. I hate Christians. Stop telling us what to do. You can't control us. And the other half was like, yes, let's be like Buddhists. Let's be nice. So we ended up with this horrible schism. And so then YSWAP came out, and that just fractured the whole thing. And then YouTube comes out right around the same time. And I was like, you must be kidding me. It was almost inevitable that the show was just going to go down the tubes after that.
Right. Why not hop on YouTube as the platform? Just kind of change the platform. Would that have worked?
It probably would have. I didn't really have a lot of experience in digital media as far as video is concerned. I was beginning to experiment with it. I think if I had more experience in that field and I saved my money like I should have been and really invested in technology, I think the program would have still been going on, and I wouldn't have had all the many struggles that I've had since then, since the program. So I like to politely say that I retired from it,
Right.
but I really retired broke. And, but it's okay because it gave me an opportunity to move into some other things, which we'll probably talk about soon as well.
Tell us, we probably will, but take us back to the beginning of the show and the salad days, if you will, the halcyon days. The guys have described it to me as kind of an early version of our show, where we reach out to celebs in our sub-industry here,
Yes.
and leaders in the movement, and try to get them on and interview them, and or educators, writers, authors, researchers, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
There's a scholarly spin on it. You did mention a lot of science stuff that you poked at early. Tell us about the nature of the podcast and what were the highlights of those early years.
Yeah, I mean, so when people listen to it, when people go to infidelguy.com, what they're going to find are archives full of programs, and they'll see a slow evolution from the very beginning to the end. Not much of a change, but they'll see some changing. And sure enough, yes, I interviewed many people from various backgrounds, as I mentioned before, Doc Bob Price, Richard Carrier, Bart Ehrman. I had a lot of different people. I mean, I can't even name them all. Dan Barker, Charya S. I had her on a program, and in fact, we got relatively close. We called each other all the time, and I started learning a lot about. She would tell me things to say, "Don't tell anybody this," but so she would tell me a lot of things about who she really was, where she lived, about her kid, about her husband, about all these issues, her books, and her critics, and how it really affects her, and what she really thinks about it. And anyway, we could talk about Charya as well later. But she was great. She was one of my best guests, I think, Charya. I just loved her to death. She was just awesome. But so the show, sometimes I have scholarly people on, and sometimes we would just rant. It'll just be me talking about a topic. And my listeners said they really liked those more than anything else, probably because I was a sucky interviewer, but they really said they liked the rant programs because I was able to just, off cuff, just say what I wanted to say. So that's pretty much what they'll find, and that's what the show was all about. Again, originally I thought it was only me and Jake doing this as far as I knew. So I just wanted to provide another resource for free thinkers, atheists, people on the fence to say, listen to something that's different. And I wanted to challenge, especially the Black community, because in the Black community, you are religious. That is what it is to be Black in America. You have to be religious. And to my surprise, when I went out talking to family and friends about my new position and the things I've discovered about the Bible and all these things, they shut me down. I was a traitor to the Black race. And so I said, okay, I guess that's not going to work. So the door-to-door activism didn't work very well, but the radio show did pretty well.
You brought up the being a Black atheist earlier. Why don't we see more of you? If you sort of moved away from the movement, and I would say it's a pretty common subject, the lack of Black leaders in the atheist movement, and of course we've made friends with the 4 or 5 of them that there are. Where have you been, man? Let's get you back out there on the stage at the Reason Rally and places like that.
Yeah, it's growing now, and to be honest, I just wasn't in a position financially, and I'm a school teacher now, so that really takes up a lot of my time as well. But we're out there. We're growing. There are a lot of organizations out there, really spearheaded by the Black Non-Believers group. I started a few groups as well early on, Black Free Thinkers, blackatheist.com, and there was just no one coming to the sites, no one signing up, no one organizing, and I wasn't a great grassroots organizer. I was just a guy talking behind a microphone. So, but now you have a lot of new groups coming out. So I think we are increasing. And I think a lot of us, by the way, we are atheistic. We just don't know it. I think many of us are now trying to call ourselves spiritual and non-religious. And you'll get a lot of that. And you'll hear a lot of pseudo-intellectualism kind of mixed in there and bad science. But many more Blacks are beginning to reject Christianity.
Well, do you think that there certainly are, but what's your impression of closeted Black atheists? I mean, most of them are just, like you said, afraid to come out because they don't want to take grandma's crap, and they really did this. How much does it really cost you to go to church every week and put up with it? Do you think that there's a lot of that in the population?
Well, I think because there are so few of us, when it comes to relationships, for instance, I think what's happening is that we end up marrying or dating people who are religious. And I think that might placate us a little bit, or that suppresses maybe our dogmatic, stance on it, or maybe we're not as militant. I don't know. But I have talked to a lot of black men and women who are married to theists, and they just go to church and just be quiet. And I ask them, why are you doing that? Well, this is the person I love. I don't want to cause any friction. And also, it's very common as well in black communities. We have ministers and pastors in our families, and it's deeply rooted. One of my cousins actually emailed me because I was curious about why am I being rejected by my family. It seems like all of a sudden, because I'm a genealogist as well, and so I'm the one heading all the research in my family, and everyone seemed to be, a lot of people are turning their back on me. And I asked one of my cousins what's going on, and she says, well, you have to understand, our history is just full of ministers and pastors, and you are kind of the antithesis of what our family history was all about, So that might be one reason. And again, I've talked to enough people where I know that's the case. They just kind of don't want to make waves with, as you mentioned, your family and also their significant others.
Now, how did you personally grow up? Not Catholic. I assume you went to Catholic University, but did you grow up in a traditional?
No, I actually grew up in a very non-traditional household. My mom, and I'm raising my kids the same way. My mom, if I had a question, my mother would do everything she can to help me find the answer. In many respects, actually, she would tell me, look it up yourself. Here's the encyclopedia. Boom, there you go.
Yeah.
And I've kind of raised my kids to do the same thing. And so when it came to religion, and they both would tell you they're atheists. They don't challenge anybody about it in person. They will online. But in person, they don't really talk about it much. But if they ask me a question, I tell them how to look it up, where to look it up. And I want them to tell me about what they learned. And so that's pretty much how I was raised. My mom, she's no longer with us physically. I hope that's not too metaphysical. But anyway, my mom is no longer here. She died 2 years ago. But she would tell you a story. And one day I asked my mother about Easter. I said, Mom, what is Easter all about? I was maybe, 11 or 10. And my mom said, you know what? She was about to tell me. Then she said, you know what? Why don't you just look it up? And I looked it up and I read it. And I said, Mom, people really believe this stuff? And she was like, yeah, they do. And she allowed me. She never stopped me from going to church. I would have friends that would invite me to their Christmas functions, to the church functions, whatever. And I would just go. And I think I was fortunate to be able to see all these different religions in action, doing their things, because I began to notice a commonality. They all think they're right.
But your parents didn't have a church.
My mom said that we were Black Episcopalian.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had no idea what that meant.
Right.
So not much of an identity there.
Yeah.
No, not really. We're Black, African, Episcopalian. I think I heard her say Methodist once. I was just all confused, and it didn't matter because we didn't go to church. So what she called me was, she was really telling me what traditionally she was called and what she was. So it wasn't until much later, and I think I had a show with my mom on it actually, and she talked about how her journey, how she began to move away from religion, is because she would sit in church and she would have these bad thoughts, these perverted thoughts about the attractive men she saw, and she found herself moving further and further back to the back of the church until one day she just didn't go anymore. And so I thought that was really interesting. So, but she still called herself spiritual. She still called herself Episcopalian or Methodist, whatever she wanted to call herself for that year. And it wasn't until I began talking to her about it, and she said, "I'm an atheist." And that was.
It sounds like you got lucky there. You got at least rationalist parents, if not outright.
I did. My father's the same way. I think my earliest remembers, he was a strict disciplinarian, and all I remember the most was getting beatings and watching Kung Fu Gold Theater in the 80s. That's pretty much all I remember. So we didn't go to church either, So yeah, I was fortunate in that regard. But again, I'm so glad that's why I believe, and I talk to a lot of people about this, especially when I go give lectures and stuff about, how do we allow people to have beliefs, in the public system, square, in the school system without having all this, all these violations of governmental law. I say, look, why don't we just let's expose our students to everything? Let's have a religious studies class and they learn everything from a completely unbiased worldview. These are just the facts. This is what they believe. Next, this is what they believe. These are the dominant religions. This is what they believe. I had a nice viewing at my home. They all came over and we just looked at this video called The Naked Truth. And they, as skeptics they were, they began to expose me to a concept of just because it sounds good, it might not be true. You need
Right.
to really look deep into your look at the evidence and follow their references and blah 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 blah, the resources but that still, even though there's a lot wrong with that video, I learned that there were just many ancient ways to look at the universe, and so that was my start. And then shortly after that, I discovered Acharya.
Right. And sometimes these myths that they're talking about don't actually talk about what they're trying to say. Like, for example, walking on water could be the stars' movement across the ocean for a particular day. It's walking on water. It's essentially meaning it's a timekeeping piece that has now been changed into reality. And that's mythicism, in my opinion, even if you're not talking about a specific character.
Of course, you're right. I mean, like I recently wrote an article. Well, actually, I wrote it a long time ago, but I recently resurrected the Infidel Guy because it was down for a long time. But I wrote an article about the concept of where Satan, where these demons and angels come from. Mm-hmm. And again, we're borrowing from nature. So it cannot be a coincidence that all of our angels, they're all beings of light with feathery wings, and then the demons are all these bat-like creatures with these webbed wings at night. I mean, come on! It's like we're borrowing from reality, from nature, and these are things that bothered us and scared us, and we didn't understand them, and we anthropomorphized them, and there you go. And it doesn't really take a genius to kind of see those relationships there. You know?
It takes normal intelligence, though, and unfortunately we're lacking in that, sadly, in this country these days. I'm going to let you speak to your position as a teacher. Regardless of your involvement in the movement itself, you're doing the important work if you're working in a public school. With the way, or any school for that matter, with the way that your mind works, I can tell already. I have kids in the elementary school, and I'm shocked. I'm shocked at the incursions of religion. Talk to us about your experience in the school. Where do you teach? Where are you at? What age kids? And is it a sick ass problem? Like I see it myself right now.
It's a really bad problem. As a parent, I saw that there was a problem, and then actually working as an educator in the system, it is hopelessly troubling. Wow, where do we begin? First of all, the men, there are a lot of good kids. Don't get me wrong, a lot of good kids, a lot of good parents, a lot of good teachers. It's almost as if the system, however, is rigged to almost breed non-critical thinkers, followers. We really, and I hope I really don't offend your sports lovers, all right, listening, all right? But we really put far too much focus on sports. Everybody wants to, and entertainment. Everybody wants to be a rapper, a singer, a basketball player, a football player, and I'm like, you do know that you need a fallback, mechanism here. You need something to fall back on just in case you break your arm. And a number of my students were breaking their bones, and having to change their career ideas. And these are juniors and seniors who now have to reevaluate their life because now they get injured on the field. But yeah, they come in and their knowledge, and you would think at 9, 10, 11, 12th grade, the knowledge that you would think they should have. And again, and if some of my students watch this, I apologize. I'm not calling you stupid. I love you. I do. But they know it as well, though. They lack some very general knowledge you would think we would know. Like some of my students did not know that our sun is a star.
Okay. Yep.
That's pretty freaking scary.
Yeah, it is.
So how do you not know this? They don't know that antibiotics don't. A lot of people don't know this one, but I had to educate them on this one. But still, by now we should know that antibiotics do not. They just can't treat viruses. It just doesn't work that way. And I can go all day with these. There's just tons of these misunderstandings of science and of reality. The evolution thing. I wrote a paper, a graduate level paper, in which I polled my students and I asked them a series of questions about their perceptions or really their beliefs and their attitudes about evolution before I gave them the lesson. I wanted to know what they thought, and most of them believe that same old arguments you hear from Kent Hovind on the internet. It's like, if there are monkeys, if we come from monkeys, why are there still monkeys today?
Right.
And these are the same arguments. I was like, oh my gosh, they're getting this from Kent Hovind. I was freaking out, And so I made sure that during the lesson on natural selection and evolution, I made sure that I covered, defeated, and destroyed every single freaking argument that these guys keep putting out there. And it wasn't even part of the curriculum, but it needed to be done because obviously my students were getting a lot of bad information from internet resources.
Yeah, it's funny with Kent Hovind, too. I mean, heck, they haven't even moved on to Answers in Genesis, who's the successor to him. It's equally bad, but looks a little bit better.
Agreed.
What did you see with your perceptions like before and after? Did you change? Did you move the meter?
Yes, the meter did move. It was statistically significant as well. I actually had some experts in statistics evaluate it for me because I'm not a mathematician. But I had them double check my numbers and double check some things. They said, "Whoa, your lesson really did shift." They really seem to have much better understanding of things than they did before. What I really found interesting, though, is that when it came to the idea of, okay, now that you know these things, now that you know what the science says, what are your beliefs, though, about it? Now, those are two different things, right? As you know, what you know is different than what you believe. So there was a huge shift in their understanding of natural selection and evolution. But when I asked them, though, but do they accept it? To my surprise, they went from, I don't believe any of this crap, I don't accept any of this crap, to I'm confused,
right,
to I don't really know now. Not that I don't believe in it at all, but I'm confused. And I thought, whoa, what the heck? What does that mean? I'm still evaluating this, trying to figure out. I mean, I know what it means. It means they're stuck, right? They're going through this cognitive dissonance now. They're kind of stuck between trying to make two different ideas conform in some way,
right?
To their perceptions of reality. And so I think that's very troubling. And there's a lot more work that needs to be done. But I'm glad they know it. But passing a test is okay. That's good enough to get your A or your B or your C or a D to go to the next grade. But that means when you go out on the street, you still do not understand science. At least you don't accept it anyway. You don't accept the science.
Do you think that some of this starts with religion, like not knowing the sun is a star, thinking antibiotics will treat viruses in some way? Do you think that it starts with this religion with a certain denial? Or do you think that religious takes away from the coolness of science?
Well, I think what religion does is that it gives you temporarily satisfying answers that don't allow you to dig deeper.
Okay.
That's what it does. And so, right, if you read the biblical scripture, for instance, I'm not saying all Christians do this, but I can imagine some saying, well, the Bible says God put two great lights in the sky. That's what they are. They're two great lights. You know what I mean? It's like there's no reason to dig deeper and say, wait a minute, what? Is that a star? I mean, why would you have that idea? So, yeah, and I see it over and over again as well. And I've had students tell me, well, the Bible says, and I would hear that over and over again. When I started talking about evolution during the lesson, I had students, as I'm talking, they would say, God, God, God. I mean, like right in the middle of my lecture. And it was really aggravating. But I learned to use that, though, as part of the lesson. Whenever they would do that, I'll say, okay, explain it to me then. Okay, so you said God did it. How? And so, but that's something I learned, though, from a radio show.
You actually moved the needle on wife swap a little bit. I think one of the boys of the other family was saying, that is weird that the dinosaurs don't fit in. I mean, but did you see there was some cognitive dissonance there? I mean, he just never really thought about it.
You know what's funny? I don't even remember that part because I guess that would have been my wife's side, right, at the time. It would have been her on that side. Yeah, so I don't even remember, but it's possible. Because I was so upset about how they made, the other house look. I knew that she was going to handle it. I was more concerned about me. But but I don't even remember that, but it's possible.
Yeah, one of all the other things I noticed, and I just jotted it down so I have to say it, was on the open-mindedness. They gave you the Jesus Saves cap, the wife, and you put that right on. You're like, yep, no problem. But yet the preacher did refuse to wear the shirt, the no God. There was a God with a little X through it. You wouldn't do it. So I just thought that was funny.
I understood it too, and I didn't even fault him for that. A lot of people made a big issue about that. And I said, well, you got to remember, he really believes this stuff.
Well, that's his job, too. He doesn't want his parishioners out there seeing him with his
exactly,
what do you care if you have Jesus Saves? I've seen some nice-looking Jesus Saves hats.
Zeus Saves.
Right? Yeah, right. Who cares? It's a nice-looking hat, right?
It's just been fun. For me, it was just been fun. And I wanted to also show the public exactly what you saw. I am far more open-minded to understand that I am not going to allow this moment define me. It is not who I am.
So I can see what you're saying. In some ways, religion is squelching the idea of getting to the bottom of things, because maybe even it starts young. It's 6 and 7. Maybe you ask the wrong question. Doesn't the dinosaurs prove God doesn't exist? And then if you've got shamed for that by a tough uncle or aunt or your father or whatever, like, you may not want to ask those questions more and more and more. So you don't think, I'm going to be that guy that figures out where cancer comes from or what in that, it could hurt, right?
But this is very common, especially, again, I can only speak for my community because I was raised in a predominantly black community, but it's very common, and what I've noticed is when a child asks questions, especially when in the middle of church, about something that doesn't seem right, I have seen parents turn around and slap their kids in the face.
Wow.
And say, you do not question the Lord. You do not question God. How dare you? Be quiet. Shut up. Sit down and be quiet. And so many, and this goes, of course, I'm pretty sure, across the board among many devoutly religious families, the children are beat into not, thinking. Or shall I say they were thinking, but that was squelched. Right away, they were told, you can't do that. So, why think any more deeply? Because apparently it's wrong to think.
And I can guarantee you that is not exclusive to the black church community. For sure, that happens everywhere in church. He's Reginald Finley. He is classic podcaster. You are infidel! The infidel guy. I love saying that whenever I see that word. You are infidel!
Yeah. That's right.
You're a son of goat and camel. But, we are at the moment where we like to do a little feature called Myth of the Day. Myth of the Day is brought to you by Kenosha Racine atheists and free thinkers. Atheism, activism in Southeast Wisconsin. Now here's Mythmeister Antonio with Myth of the Day.
Thank you, Reginald, for your pioneering work with the Infidel Guy and for being on the show today. Today's Myth of the Day is a two-parter. Pre-Christian dying and rising gods, in connection to many of the individuals and scholars that you have interviewed in the past. Osiris, Egyptian god of the underworld and vegetation, was worshipped well before 2000 BC. Tammuz, Sumerian god of food and vegetation, dates back well before 2000 BC. Dionysus, Greek god of wine, who also turned water into wine, dates back earlier than 1000 BC. And Baal, the Canaanite god of fertility and storms, was worshipped well before 1000 BC. Also, gods and goddesses that walked on water. Quote, walking on water was a miracle attributed to many mythological figures before Judaism, Islam, or Christianity were even considered as a concept. In the Ugaritic texts, the goddess Asherah was known as, quote unquote, she who treads on the sea, 1200 BC. As a side note, that sacred sea or lake upon which Asherah trod was known as Yam Kinneret and is now called the Sea of Galilee. We also have the Etruscan god Usil, who dashes across breaking waves. And in a similar story of Peter as a disciple to Jesus, we have Sariputra, who is a disciple to Buddha, who on his way to see the Lord or the Blessed One walks on water as a shortcut. And that is our myth of the day.
I went out with a Sariputra in Chicago. When I lived there in Chicago, Sariputra, she was a hottie.
No, I usually don't take the shortcuts over water.
We'd like to remind everyone that the Myth Information Conference is coming up with the big debate planned between Bart Ehrman. I want to hear about Bart Ehrman. Reggie talked to Bart Ehrman. On October 21st, Bart Ehrman coming out to debate Dr. Robert Price on the actual subject of the historicity of Jesus itself.
They've
and everybody's
never
looking
met.
forward to that. They've never met. And
we never met in Loch Torrens in a debate.
And Bart's not a big debater, so it's been a struggle, but we got some great sponsors and some great benefactors who have made this happen. And right now you can still get tickets at mythicistmilwaukee.com. And Jason reminds me that it will be streamed online, and $9.99 will get you the stream so that you can watch at home. If you can't make it to the fine Cream City to actually watch the event at Turner Hall, really excited about that. As you know, I'm going to speak myself, so it'll be exciting for me to be on the undercard of such a great event. But go to mythicistmilwaukee.com, get tickets now. And get ready for that coming up in October.
Yeah, you're the bantamweight fight.
Right.
Yeah.
We're talking
That's the heavyweight.
Bantam I'm like extra ultra featherweight compared to a Dan Barker or Robert Price, But anyway, we have Reggie with us, and you got a good question, Cope, right?
Well, I mean, do you feel sometimes with atheism that when you're talking about mythicism specifically, that questioning, what God's word is, and people saying, well, I'm pretty holistic. I might be Buddhist. I might be whatever. But when you start to question Jesus' existence or Moses or any of the patriarchs in the Bible, if you say, there's really not any good evidence that Abraham or Moses existed, does that hit harder to people like brush off from that? Do they accept more of the I believe differently? But when you attack the character themselves, do you feel like that people perceive that as offense?
Honestly, I haven't even really talked with anyone recently about the historicity of these characters at all. In the past, I have, and what I remember in the past is, of course, they're shocked. They can't believe that you don't at all accept that these characters exist. But usually the conversation just goes into all the evidence in the Bible, that if this one aspect is true, all of it's true kind of thing. So I've never really had to hit anybody over the head for a very long time about that. I've never really, I'm pretty much like, oh, you believe it? You believe in the Tower of Babel? All right, whatever, moving on. Not really much to talk about. And
I find that it really does. It hits a way harder. So if I'm opening up a conversation and I can talk about, I'm not sure if I believe this or that, and people are welcome to hit that subject. But man, if you say that Moses didn't exist, I've had people sharply turn away that they just don't want to hear it.
Yeah, definitely. People definitely shut down. That's of course, because now you're attacking the foundation from which a lot of stuff is built upon, right? The same thing if you attack the Bible outright. You kind of get the same kind of response a lot of the times. But go ahead.
It's the same kind of it's the same reason that people are more likely to accept a Muslim or a Jew than an atheist for any public office or any. At least they believe in something. At least
they share the same prophets,
right? But besides that, in a general way, to face someone with such a completely different paradigm that questions yours, that shakes people at their core. The fact that there's people out there that just don't believe there's anything after this at all. And
I get that all the time. Like, people ask me whenever it comes up and they just discover that I'm a non-believer, the first thing they ask is, well, you believe in something, right? It's like they're trying to put you in, they want you to fit somewhere in their reality, that is pleasant for them,
Exactly.
Do you think that in the black community, the Nation of Islam outcompetes atheism for that reason?
Oh my God, probably. Yeah,
he rolls his eyes. We don't have video.
Yes.
So.
Oh my gosh, yes, those guys. I'm telling you, yeah. I'm sure I'm pretty sure you've conversed with these guys. Not all of them are this way, but just in my experience, I've never seen a group of so many pseudo-intellectuals in my life. It's like they just sound like they're talking about something deep, and people just listen.
Right.
And they're just enamored by this. And it's really just the strength. It's just saying it's no different than a pastor. They have this strength about them. They sound confident, and they lead a lot of people. And people, I think, fall for this. And yes, the Nation of Islam, I just addressed this topic today. It gives the air of this is really the black man's religion. This is what we should really be doing. Islam or some derivation, right? This is what we should be doing. And I had to point out today on Facebook, I said, I hope I didn't piss them off, but I was like, you do know that if you really want to talk about blacks' real religions, it predates Islam too. It's like you do know this, right? And I don't think they're too happy about that. But I had to remind them, we had our own tribal gods, before Islam. Islam also was forced onto us through war.
Right.
And, and just as Christianity has spread itself around the world. Why do you think, why have they attached, it doesn't even make sense, actually, to attach black Americans to Islam. Islam is not an African religion.
That's true. And even in the Middle East and the Arab and Muslim world, it seems like there's a considerable amount of racism going on, but instead of white people being at the top, it's Arabs at the top, and the blacks suffer. The they're not equal. The Muslim from Nigeria is not the same as the Arab.
And he brings up one of my favorite paradoxes, and I love to harp on it. Why do people cling to the religion of the conquestor, of the conquistador, the conqueror? The conquestor, the conqueror, or the imprisoner, or the slaver? Why are what phenomenon in the human mind makes that possible?
Right. That feeling of wanting that belonging, I guess. I don't know. There's something mystical. I think even Acharya talked about this, how the more ancient something is, for some reason, people just think it's just more plausible. It's like, that book is 5,000 years old. It must be true. Like, really? Like, how did you make that conclusion? I don't know. Something about that. And I think because there's, you know what, honestly, somebody more knowledgeable about it than me, like maybe Norm Allen Jr. or Anthony Penny, to come on and talk about that aspect, because I've always been curious about that as well. It's like, why have so many blacks attached themselves to the Nation of Islam and other Islamic derivations? I don't know.
Do the black Israelites, are they the same kind of phenomenon where there's someone who just comes up with an idea and they say it with confidence and people are drawn to that, right?
I've never heard of them.
Those guys on the street that claim that the 12 tribes of Israel are actually, some are the blacks in the Caribbean, some are the blacks here.
Oh, I thought those were Mormons.
That's a Native American justification thing. But have you seen those guys?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've had interactions with them as well, and of course, I mean, again, there is never a foundation of these in logic. In reality, there's just, I believe this, and then it's like, as you know, they say they believe it, and then they start trying to somehow fill in all the holes. They try to make reality fit their own belief, rather than realizing that reality is not showing you this. To give you an extreme example of this, there was a individual he called himself the Son of Man. Did you guys hear about this interview?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, this guy is the Son of Man. He said, "I am the Son of Man as mentioned in the Holy Bible," and he wanted to come on the program and argue and prove that he is somehow the Son of Man. And I kept listening to this guy, and it's like, there's no evidence that you are this besides you saying you are it. But he has followers. People believe this guy, and they're following him, believing he is the Son of Man, as mentioned in the Holy Bible. So,
well, there's the Mexican dude who says he's Jesus, right? He was on 60 Minutes or something. What's his...
Really?
Yep. Yeah, he just claims to be Jesus. He can he can draw his lineage right from David through Jesus to himself.
Nice.
And he just he sells it.
Out of Ancestry.com.
Yeah.
He got that.
Every day I wish I had the balls to sell some story like that.
Oh my gosh. I just heard you say Ancestry.com. This is a very common thing among many genealogists, and it is really chapping my hide. These folks will claim that they have traced their lineage to Adam and Eve. I am not kidding you.
Oh, nice.
And it's becoming more and more common. And I'm like, you know what? You guys, you're a researcher, for goodness sake. You have to look at evidence, and you have to look at all these different documents and make logical and rational conclusions based on the preponderance of the evidence. Where in the hell are you sure and certain that's in? It drives me crazy.
Wow. Your 3,000th cousin 25 times removed, I guess.
Yes, it's ridiculous.
But imagine how well that sells with a creationist.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, they just
maybe it's just that you want something fantastic, something guiding over your life. I think you, as an experiment, worked on a psychic line for a little bit, just to see. And maybe that's the same thing. If you're not religious, but you still want to think that there's a guiding force.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, it was interesting. You're right. The psychic network thing, I did that originally because the ad in the paper said that they were looking for counselors. And it said no experience necessary. I figured, wow, I don't have a degree at all, but I can do this without a degree, sure. And I responded to the ad in the paper, and I went to the meeting, which was at a Denny's, which was interesting. It was at a Denny's.
Okay.
And I could not find the place, because this is before GPSs, right? All you have like big thick map, right? Like McNally's, whatever, the big map. And I'm like looking for this place, and I finally found it. And I was late, and I go in, and I say, "Look, guys, I'm sorry. If I were really psychic, I would have found the place."
Did that get a laugh?
Oh, only one person chuckled, and everyone else looked at me like daggers, like piercing me. But I later, and so I knew then it was fake anyway. It was a bunch of crap, but to my surprise, it was amazing how much people want to really believe that you are psychic so that they have some control in their lives. And I think religion has many of those same parallels.
What about your fellow like psychics themselves? Did they start to believe their own hype that they really have something, or did they feel like, well, this is just a job?
Well, you know what? I didn't even have any communication with these guys after that. Once I got home, they gave me an 800 number to call into, and it was a ringmaster line. Some of you guys might remember that ringmaster line. And the phone rang twice, and I knew that it was me. And I had to, as soon as I answered the phone, it was time to put on my show. And thank you for calling Psychic Network. This is Paladin. Can you just give me your birth date? And I had the whole show. And I even had one guy call in and say, "It's a pleasure talking to fellow countrymen."
Nice.
Like, oh no, not at all. He said, so what part of the UK are you from? It's like, oh my gosh.
Southampton.
Would you make up something? He called it bluff. Oh no, I'm sorry.
I
Man.
couldn't.
Just an accident.
I said something along the lines of, I said, well, I actually choose to not really just,
Yeah, nice, yeah. Creep.
Yeah.
I don't want to let you know where I live.
You don't need all about me, man. Come on, man. It's all about you.
That's funny.
But yeah.
Good
So
stuff.
it was fun though, but I later wrote an article about it. It was translated in many languages all over the world, and infidel.org was the first organization that picked up my story and published it.
Yeah, one other question I wanted to talk to you about, and kind of misappropriation. Many times, like, science can be stifled by God has the answers to creation and things like this. What about history? Do you have either fellow history professors that are talking about the same thing? Because I often hear, especially from the Islamic world, that, well, if we can just get back to the older Islam, then 800 AD, that Baghdad's the center of culture. It's, this amazing achievements by Islam that I don't think should be attributed to Islam so much as the people themselves. And it was more of a pluralistic society, the lack of a hardcore religion that allowed that. You see the same Renaissance in Spain, and also Christianity could say the same thing. We need to get back to our roots when we were a stronger country. It seems like they're going for a history that never really existed. They're saying this. They say it about the Ottoman Empire. They cast it as this amazing empire that was so heterogeneous and so cool, but yet they were importing many slaves, both white and black. And it feels like the revision of history is the same thing as the science, and I think that hurts. That religion doesn't look into this.
Also, I think what happens is they pretty much focus on just those instances in which there might have been a religious motivation for this awe-inspiring artwork or architecture.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the whole period is reminiscent because this guy was Islamic or Muslim. So therefore, the whole period marks. You're right, and that's incorrect.
Yeah, it would be no better to say that Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain were, Spain's this powerful country, but I mean they ruined it by killing the Moors, by the Reconquista, really crushed Spain and reduced their power.
The expulsion of the Jews there right thereafter too.
Yeah.
I mean,
and the Moors and the Muslims. I mean, it seems like it's tolerance, it's pluralism that really helps, not religions actually getting away from it.
I do think though that part of what happens is that the people in Islamic countries do have that long memory where they do remember the time, or they were told about the time that you're talking about, and there's a bitterness that their culture is not the dominant one anymore. I do think,
but they haven't looked into why though. It's not Islam. Yeah. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. I think that's the same. You can say the same way with Christianity. It wasn't conquering the new world and forcing religion upon the indigenous that made that religion great, or that it was inventors, people that were figuring out how to navigate through the stars and build ships across oceans.
Right, and they weren't praying for it to happen. They had to use their own intellect and look at reality and manipulate their world to make these things come about. I agree.
It'd be interesting to have a focus on it from a historical perspective and really enlighten this too, because I don't think Christians, it's the same way that you're saying they don't deep into science, probably not into history either.
Is the solution in education? Use an educator, and how do we insert the cultural education that we're missing, that you alluded to earlier? These kids should be taught, all world religions, all world philosophies from a young age. How do we get that done when they can't even get basic science covered and they can't even get reading and writing covered?
Yeah.
What's the solution?
Unfortunately, the solution might be inescape, and there's nothing we can do, unfortunately. And I hate to say that, but the reality is you just have many kids growing up in environments in which the sciences are just not important. Mm-hmm. Using technology is, but actually talking about reality in any way that would influence the way they look at the world, there's any conversations about that. And if you don't have parents as well that are really helping to influence their inquisitiveness and things like that, then you get a lot of kids who just don't care either. And unfortunately, it's generational ignorance, and the attitude is there too. They just don't care. I hear all the time from my young girls, especially, this is just my experience, especially my young black girls, science is hard. I don't understand this stuff. Why we got to do this? And I hear this all the time, and it's like, wow, because our culture is just inundated with the complete opposite of this stuff. That is why. So until we can show that or reinvigorate that passion and that drive, maybe like was during the space race or something, there's got to be something that's got to happen that's going to really begin to steer everyone in the direction. And it's going to have to be big, something that is going to allow everyone to get on board. Maybe when the first people get on Mars, I think we might have another resurgence, of science when that happens, maybe. Or alien invasion, one of the two. I don't know.
What's going to happen first?
Alien invasion.
I think you're probably right.
And Prague.
Yes.
They'll leave it up to the government to get us to Mars. That's probably true.
Yeah, but I think much can be done. Where I feel like we're recycling in a way. The small amount that we do, my can doesn't mean anything, but all of ours do. And exposing this, getting it out is making at least a marginal move.
Well, that helps because you're right. The younger generations, they're out there, and I think they're going to end up bumping into these ideas no matter what now, because there are more and more and more younger people out there talking about these various things as well. Of course, there are young people still believing that the Earth is flat too, but we're out there, and I think that if we keep using technology like we're doing, putting information out there, and hopefully again having passionate educators like us, you guys are educators too, trying to just share what we know. But I think we have to do it in a way that is also inviting, and there's nothing wrong with condemning bad behavior. But I think I think we should show people why they're bad thoughts and not just attack them because they have bad thoughts. That's just my idea on that.
Reggie,
and if I may, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, can we get you back into the stream of things here? Can we invite you to a conference sometime to speak? Can we?
That would be great, actually.
The movement needs you, my friend. You're a genius.
Well, thank you. Now I'm sweating now. But I haven't received compliments like that in a long time. But no, and actually, I still get emails like at least every week from someone who's saying the show changed their life, in their life.
That's cool.
Yeah, and that makes me want to come back. And actually, my son Reggie Jr., he's 15 now, so he and I are thinking about starting a new podcast in which we are going to be talking about evolution and biology and trying to really show this unity, like really how much more alike we all are rather than how much different we are. But we will talk about the differences, of course, but we really want to accent the beauty of our world and how it's brings us all together and how we're one family, how we're all cousins in the grand tree of life.
Yep.
And in fact, I created a website called amazinglife.bio. In fact, if you go to infidelguy.com, you'll see all my websites listed on the left and on the bottom. And I've also created a website. Again, I'm also a health educator, a consumer advocate. So I've just created a website called cancercurescams.com. Some of my graduate work was on that. And so I'm hoping to get my PhD also in public health, because I really, really want to destroy these idiots out there, destroying lives by lying to people about how their cancer is going to be cured through eating carrots or something or getting a spinach enema.
Right. So, pseudoscience can be just as dangerous as praying for a miracle,
if not more.
Yeah.
Well said, Reggie, and a perfect wrap to the program. Thanks so much for joining us.
Cancercurescams.com.
And the infidelguy.com. Safe to say you've changed lives and you're still changing them. People can go to those archives and have their worldview blown away.
Their rational minds rocked.
Great.
And they're easy to access, too.
Great job. Thanks again for joining us. Next show, it's Dr. Bill Zingroni. Is that the dude from Chicago, Sean? He's our buddy. We see him at the stuff because he's right around the corner. He's a PhD in developmental psychology. I didn't know that. I thought he was like a bleacher bum at Wrigley, to be honest with you. He's a great guy in the movement, but I would have had no idea he was a PhD, my friend. So
Smart guy.
We'll see what he has to say next week. That's Bill Zingroni from Chicago, my friend. So join us then, and we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Very good.
The Mythicist Milwaukee Show is brought to you by Mythicist Milwaukee. Producer Sean Frasek. Associate producer Melanie Lawson. Engineer Jason Lawson. Mythmeister Antonio Blandone. Researcher Kristen Whitaker Hood. Closing theme written and performed by Shelley Siegel. On behalf of co-host Brian Edward and the entire team, I'm Rob Moore reminding you to keep it safe and keep it secular.
And who will be